Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about the radar detector I have in my M4. It's called the Escort 9500 CI. This is actually the third 9500 CI that I've owned. I first got one about 6-7 years ago in my 2008 M3. They hadn't been out long at that time. I got the first generation one, and that radar I had for 5 years. It was rock solid. I then got one in my 911 a couple of years ago. That was the third generation one. It came with a couple of faults, like the control box was faulty when I got it, so they replaced that for me. But otherwise, that worked well as well. This is the fourth generation one. As far as I can tell, the only difference is being that they've updated the laser jammers on this model. And they've dropped the rear laser jammer. It's now an option, so that's a little annoying. But otherwise, I've found the fourth generation 9500 CI to be rock solid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about what comes in the box, and then I'm going to go to the car. I'm going to look at how it's installed in my car, and then we're going to take it for a drive. And for comparison, I've brought along a Valentine One, which has been supplied by my friend Nick of the challenges I do in some of my other videos. Nick's kindly lent me his Valentine One. I used to also have a Valentine One, and I personally believe the time of the Valentine One has passed. That's still a very sensitive radar. They're very good at highway monitoring, but as you'll see in the video, you know, the biggest problem I have with the Valentine One these days is that just the enormous amount of false alarms that it shows makes it, you know, too annoying to use. You end up blocking out the noise and ignoring the warnings, and it really provides no protection against lasers as well, which is becoming more and more of a threat. You know, it does have laser protection, but when I used to use the Valentine One, I got several tickets with lasers, because the problem with lasers is cops are generally not flashing their lasers around. They are waiting until the car's in sight and then bang, getting it straight away. And by the time it warns you that you've got a laser trained on you, it's too late. They've already got your speed. Whereas the one of the many features of the 9500 CI is that it has laser jammers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So let's start off with having a look at what's in the box, and there is a lot of crap in the box. As you can see, most of it is for installation internally, so most of this stuff in the box goes under the dash, away from eyesight. There's really only three things you ever get to see, and that's the little control box, the little display, and depending on where you put the laser jammers and the actual radar detector, you might have them in view at the front of your car. For my car, I've got the laser jammers just hidden up under here, and I've got the radar detector behind the front of the bumper there, so it can't be seen. And that works well for me. Those seem to be sensitive enough that I pick up everything, and it works well enough, and it's not noticed. So yes, you get a lot of stuff, and that's one of the it's, I guess, one of the biggest hindrances to owning a 9500 CI is that it has to be professionally installed, and it is an expensive radar detector. You know, the list price on Escort's website is $2,000, and Escort also owns the Bell radars, and there's a cheaper version through Bell, but if you configure it the same, they're much the same price. The reality is that the wholesale price of these is much less. I think it's probably around $1,000. So if you shop around, you can get them for about $1,300. And then you need to find a professional installer, and preferably your car dealer, if you can get them to do it, to install it. And for me, my car dealer's always done it for me, so that's been great. That way they're not ever blaming the installer, the radar detector, on any faults the car might have. So all up, I've found that it's generally cost me about $1,600 to buy and install the radar detector. So certainly don't pay any more than about that if you're looking to get one. In comparison, the Valentine One is still in the $400 to $450 range, so a lot cheaper a fraction of the price. And a lot of other radar detectors, including the Escort, do the sort of windshield or sun visor mounted models for in the 200 to 400 range. But really I'm going to just focus on this very, very expensive model and the Valentine One for the sake of this video. I guess before we go any further, a question that a lot of people ask, and are likely to ask on this video, is are these even legal to be used? And in most cases, radar detectors are legal. In fact, here in the US, only 2 states have them illegal, and that is Washington DC and Virginia. All the other states, radar detectors are legal, except a lot of states make them illegal for commercial vehicles. So you need to check the rules if you drive a commercial vehicle. Laser jamming, however, is illegal in a lot of states, and I'll list them here because there's too many to read out. And so you've got to be careful about using laser jamming in these states. And I guess that's one of the nice things about the 9500 CI is that you can install it in such a way that it's very, very hard to detect. And they actually have anti-radar detection technology in them. So for those states that are looking to detect a radar detector, it's very, very hard to detect this particular model. So if we go and have a quick look at how I've got it installed in my car, and I'll quickly whip you through the menu options, and then I'm going to take you for a drive in my girlfriend's car with the Valentine One, and a drive in my car with the Escort 9500 CI. Okay, so here we are inside the car, and there's not much to see. There's only really 2 things to see with this detector, because most of it's up under the dash. The GPS aerial, the master box, the speaker, the USB cables, everything to do with it is all up under the dash. Really the only 2 things to see in here are the button, the little button module, which it can be put wherever you want. A lot of people like to have it down here so it's an easy reach. I wanted it sort of out of the way, and I'm used to it being up here on the dash. Not that you press the buttons very often. Probably the button you press the most often is mute. If it happens to detect a cop or has a false alert, you just don't want to be annoyed by the beeping, hit mute. Otherwise, generally you don't touch the buttons. The other thing is the display. Now the display, if I turn it on here, I'll turn on the ignition on my car and it will come on, and it displays passport, the model number, and that I've got the expand turned off and laser shifting turned on. Now what I'll do is I'll quickly go over the menus with you, but I wanted to talk a bit about why I've got it up here in the corner of the windscreen. There's a lot of places obviously to put it. People tend to have it either somewhere around the speedo. Sometimes I've noticed a lot of people build a little module and have both the buttons and the display down here. I think that's ridiculous. The reason I like it up here in the corner of the windscreen is it's in my peripheral vision. So even if I don't hear the beep, because I generally have the sound right down low, I'll see it doing something. And it's so rare that it has a false alarm that if it does something, I know there's generally a cop there. So, and I'm quick to react. I'm quicker to react from something visual than from a sound. So it's nice to be there. It's nice that it's up in the corner there. I think it's sensible to have it somewhere that's within eyesight without having to take your eye off the road. Anyhow, let's have a quick look at the buttons over here. The buttons are fairly self-explanatory. On the top there's the power button should you need to power it off. The sensitivity button just takes you from highway mode to metro mode. The volume, obviously if you press the volume button you'll see the volume increasing, and you press it again it decreases to your desired level. The mark button allows you to mark an area that is frequently, say, a speed trap, and anytime you go near that area again it'll count down from sort of 1,000 feet or more, I don't know, from a good mile away. I think it'll say a speed trap coming up from any direction. And the brightness button obviously changes the brightness from auto, which will depend on whether the lights are on, to dark, minimum, medium, and maximum. I tend to leave it on maximum because even at night, it's such a small screen, it doesn't really bother me. And having it on maximum brightness means it always catches my attention when something pops up. Otherwise, the other button combination is holding in the volume and the brightness, and that puts it into the menu mode preferences. And we'll quickly go through those. The main menus are, come on, the display, how the display is shown, and mine's set to the little rolling dot. You can set it to be constantly showing the speed or its mode. After that is where the GPS is on. Obviously you want to leave that on all the time. Auto learn is a really important feature to leave on. That's the feature which cuts out all those false alarms. Speed alert off, what that does is it shows your current speed as soon as it shows a bogey, which I find really annoying because I want to know what the bogey is, so I have that turned off. Oops, get back in there again. Auto learn, speed alert, meters standard. This is probably the thing that people fiddle with the most. There's three. Standard is what I leave it on, which just shows the signal strength of whatever bogey type it's detecting. Whereas the expert and the what's it called? Hang on, get that menu up again. Expert and specialist, they'll actually show, the expert meter can show multiple bogey types. So if you're getting a K and a KA band and a laser, it'll show them all on there at once. And the expert mode actually shows the frequency of the detection. So for those people that are experts, I guess, at knowing what cop radar with the cops in your local area, what frequency they're using with their radars, that's a good one to have. But for me, I just leave it on the standard. That works very well for me. Where were we? Auto mute just mutes it down after it's initially beeped at you loud. Units, English, obviously. You can have it in miles per hour or metric. Voice commands that will tell you what's going on, a very annoying feature. I have that turned off. And bands modification, what I've got there is I have my X band turned off and everything else turned on. And finally, the last one there is, and finally, mark modification gives you whether you want to turn off or on red light camera, speed cameras, speed traps, and others. Basically what that is it's got a database which you can update. I don't bother updating it. It comes with a year or 2 years or something of free updates if you can be bothered connecting your laptop to the device every now and then to update the database. If you live in an area where there's a lot of red light cameras or speed cameras, then it might be worth updating. But I think anyone that runs red lights needs a good slap in the face with a pig trotter. And where I live, there's no speed cameras, so I don't bother updating it. So yeah, that's the menus, and that's how it works basically. It's pretty straightforward, you know. I think the best thing about it is it turns itself on. It's nice and inconspicuous, you know. Any cop sticking his head in the window of my car can't see that little display up in the corner there, doesn't see that there, so it doesn't think I've got a radar detector. And because it's pretty quiet, I leave it on pretty low volume most of the time. My passengers never notice it, but the best thing about it is that I always notice when it's telling me something and I react quickly to it. So it's nice that way, and it very, very rarely gives me false alarms. And I think that's the very best feature about it. That and the ability to block the laser. You know, more and more I'm seeing cops using laser, which is very instant on. There's no time to react, and I'm pretty comfortable with just sailing on through because I know it does a great job of blocking those lasers. Okay, here we are in my girlfriend's Jetta. I know it looks a little bit like a homeless person's car, but apparently that's my fault for not cleaning it enough. What I've done is I've mounted the Valentine One up here on the visor, and I've pointed the GoPro at it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive about 2 miles up the Boston Post Road, and then another maybe 3 miles up the highway, 95, to get an idea of you know, what the Valentine One reacts to. So all in all, about 10 minutes driving. So I think we're all set. Oh, I'm going to turn it on. There we go. Turn that little baby on. So I've set the Valentine One to L mode, which is its most advanced. Shush. Fuck. Its most advanced mode for cancelling out false alarms. But as you'll see, my God, this thing just goes crazy all the time, isn't it? We haven't even left the parking lot. It's already picking up four bogeys apparently. Anyway, off we go. The reason I'm driving the... Shush! Damn thing. The reason I'm driving the Jetta is because I wanted to make it fair, because if I put it in the M4, who knows what electronics within the M4 might trigger the Valentine One to go off. So this is a much lower tech car, so should be fairer. The interesting. Luckily, my girlfriend doesn't watch the Nick Murray YouTube channel, so I'm free to say whatever I like. But the best story I have about my girlfriend's car is the day that it ran out of it ran out of oil, and she called me, and I told her to put more oil in it, and she tried to fill the oil up by putting the oil in the where the dipstick is. The VP oil spill had nothing on that event, I can tell you. Anyway, I'm gonna speed up this footage so that you don't have to sit through the whole 10 minutes of this drive. But yeah, we're just gonna go sort of a couple miles down a regular sort of metro area, and then sort of 3 or 4 miles down 95, a regular highway. And then we'll count up how many bogeys and what the Valentine One has discovered on the way. So we're 1 minute into the trip, and it should be about 10 minutes long. Okay, so here we are in my car with the 9500 Ci, and we're going to do the exact same route that we just drove in the Jetta. Once again, up a metro area for a couple miles, and then 3 or 4 miles on 95, a highway, an interstate. And I'm going to record it with the GoPro, which is just up here. And hopefully once we get it on the computer, you'll be able to see the display of the 9500. So yeah, we're going to do exactly the same trip, and you'll see how much the 9500 Ci reacts to things around this area that I live. So once again, once I get going, I'm going to speed up the film so that you don't have to sit through 10 minutes of driving, and then I'll summarise it at the end of the drive. So yeah, those two short drives were pretty interesting, and it shows the stark contrast between these two devices. You know, I got 38 separate warnings in that 10 minutes from the Valentine One, and they were all false warnings. Whereas I got no false warnings in the same drive from the Escort device, but I did get a real warning. Just purely by coincidence, my good friends at the Fairfield Police Department had that inconspicuous black SUV parked behind the bushes there, with a cop pointing a laser at me. And I didn't even slow down. I wasn't going much over the speed limit anyway, but yeah, the laser jammer just came on and we just sailed on by. And I guess that's one of the headline features of the 9500, is that it really false alarms so rarely. And why is that? Well, I guess they claim that they've got better technology, but they also have this feature, the auto learn feature, in that if it sees an alert, a radar signal, twice in the same place, which is exactly the same frequency, 24.050 frequency at exactly the same GPS coordinates twice, it blocks it out. It never shows that again. And you might think, but Nick, hey, what if there's a cop that happens to park in exactly the same spot each time? Well, I've never seen that happen. I've never seen a cop, well, I've seen cops park in the same place each time. Their radar's always slightly different frequency, so the system never seems to block them out, even if they're in exactly the same spot. But it's clever at blocking out false signals. And as you saw in that 10-minute drive, and so if you're driving outside of an area you normally drive, you might get more false alerts. But it remembers it. When I had my 9500 and my M3, I drove across the states from California to Connecticut, and from Connecticut back to California, and I've driven across the states 4 times. And what was interesting is that when I passed through towns that I'd passed through 4 or 5 years beforehand and never passed through again, it started showing beep, 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 I've recorded a false signal here. And so it remembers, even years ago, false signals that it had seen previously. And that's what's great about that system, is that it so rarely shows a false signal that when it does alert, you take notice. In the 7 years that I've owned 9500s, I've only ever had 1 ticket with them. And that was because I ignored it, because I thought I was already doing under the speed limit. I wasn't sure of the speed limit where I was. I thought it was a 35, and it was actually at 25, and I continued going along at 31, and they gave me a ticket. Dicks. Whereas when I had the Valentine, I was racking up tickets all the time. And the reason was because I just ignored its warnings. it goes off so often that you just become annoyed with it and you turn it down and you just ignore it. And the other reason being is that the Valentine, well, it's a very nice unit, and it was a good unit in its time. You know, it was the best unit you could buy perhaps 10 or 15 years ago, because it features, its main feature is that it's got a detector on the front and on the back, and by having that, it's got this neat arrow system which shows where the threat is coming from, front or back, and it would also count how many threats it's showing. And you saw in that video, at times it was picking up 6 or 7 or even 8 threats at once, which is ridiculous, because there are certainly not 6 or 7 or 8 cops using the radars against me. In fact, there was none most of the time. And so, yeah, it's nice. It was nice to have the arrow showing where the threat was coming from. And I kind of missed that with the Passport, is that with the Escort, sorry, in that it does show which direction laser threats are coming from, because there's a laser detection on the front and the back, and as you'll see in that video, it said the laser was in the front of me. It doesn't show where the radar's coming from, because it has no radar detector on the back. And that is a feature I'd like to see Escort add, is that they put a radar detector on the back so that you know which direction the threat's coming from. So, in summary, what do we like and dislike about the 9500, and what do we like and dislike about the Escort, the Valentine One? Well, the list is long for the 9500 CI. You know, I think the two headline features that I love the most is the fact that it doesn't false alert very often. That auto false alert database works so well. You know, I very rarely get false alerts on it, and so when it does alert, I take notice of it, and that's the whole point of these radar systems, is that they're meant to warn you and you're meant to take notice of it. So that is a fantastic feature, and that's a feature that's actually available in lesser models from Bell and Escort. You know, if you don't have the budget to buy this big mamma jamma system, you can buy their $200 to $400 models, and some of those have the GPS database built into them. The second feature, which is really only these big expensive ones have, is the laser jamming. Fantastic. You know, as you saw today in the drive that I did to make this video, I got laser jammed. It doesn't happen every day. It happens every few weeks to me, especially in the area that I live, New England. You know, I will get the occasional laser on me, particularly on 95 or the main interstates around here, and it, you know, I just keep barreling along. I have no concerns about the laser jamming working. I'm 100% happy that it always works, and so I don't even bother slowing down. So yeah, the laser jamming is a fantastic feature. Not strictly legal, but well enough hidden that that's not a concern to me either. And if you find that you need to obey the laws, you can just turn that feature off, which, by the way, is that feature is turned off by default on this device when you install it, so you need to turn it on. The next feature would be that it's nicely concealed. You know, cops, when you get pulled over by a cop, you've got to play by the rules. You know, you've got to make sure you're courteous, make sure you park somewhere where they're safe, make sure you keep your hands in view, make sure you're not going for your glove box, and make sure you don't have a radar detector in view. That seems to annoy them. So with this system, no problems. Even if they stick their head in the window, they don't see it. It's a nicely concealed unit, so that's a nice feature. The next feature is how configurable it is. You know, for us technology people, it's nice to be able to tinker and make it just the way you want. For my 9500, you know, I turn off X-band, I turn off the pop radar, I turn off the voices, I have the screen and the volume configured the way I want. So that's nice. Any technology that is more configurable is a real benefit. You know, you make it work the way you want it to work. And for people that are a little bit more of a radar detector geek, I guess, that they could have it in the expert mode and show the frequency and all that sort of nerdy stuff. But for me, the way I've got it configured, it's nice. It works just the way I want it to work. Of course, another feature is that it is a very strong performer when it comes to radar detection. Often get miles of warning before I actually see the cop, which is great, and that's also true of the Valentine One. And finally, the camera database. This is a feature I don't really use because in the area that I live, there are no red light cameras or speed cameras, so I don't bother updating the database. But for people that live in areas where those things exist, I guess that would be a nice feature as well. I guess the real downsides of the 9500 are its price. You know, $1,600 is a lot of money to spend on a radar system, and it'd be out of the price range of a lot of people. And the fact that it has to be professionally installed, which also adds to the price and the inconvenience of when you sell your car, you got to get it all removed, and it's a nuisance factor. But yeah, overall, there's a long list of features that make this a very worthwhile radar detector if you can afford it. On the flip side, as I said before, with the Valentine One, I believe its day is past. You know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, this was the best money could buy. But these days, I guess its best features are that it's a dual detector. So it's got the little arrows that can tell you which way the threat's coming from, and that it has a very strong highway performance. You know, it does detect a long way away. It's one of the best performers from a distance point of view. But on the downside, it's very price competitive as well. $400. It's nice and cheap, and it's easy to install yourself. But on the downside, you know, it was no use to me personally. I had one. I still got tickets with it because I ignored it. It just false alarms so often. I just ended up ignoring it, and it provides little to no protection from lasers. You know, it will tell you if you're being lasered, but by that time it's too late. You've already got a ticket. So yeah, personally, I think, well, it was a nice unit in its time. Its time is now gone, and if I was in this price range, I would probably get one of the Escort or Bell or one of the other models that has the GPS database feature that automatically gets you a database of false alerts, so that you don't get as many false alerts, because that's this thing's biggest drawback, as you saw in the videos. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it all. You know, if you've got any other questions about the 9500 CI, leave them in the comments below. I hope this has been a useful video for you guys thinking about getting one. And yep, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye then.